Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Roughstone Rolling. And if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. If you enjoy the content in this channel, please share it with those you care about. And if you disagree, please let me know. I'd love to hear your feedback. And maybe I will respond to criticism. Um, anyway, today I wanted to make a video about the book that inspired this channel. This channel is called Roughstone Trolling, and the book that inspired this channel, if you haven't figured it out already, is Richard Bushman's Roughstone Rolling. Let's see if I can get it to zoom in. Here we go. Roughstone Rolling is I would argue it's the biography of Joseph Smith. It's considered to be one of the greatest biographies. Its subtitle is A Cultural Biography of Mormonism's Founder. If you don't have a copy of this, I highly recommend it. This book has been praised by friend and foe alike. It's been praised by scholarly people and by lay people. It's been praised by people inside the faith and outside the faith. And it's honestly one of the greatest books about Mormon history you can ever read. I'll be honest, for me, history is not my strongest. It's not my strong suit. I'm a psychologist. I love philosophy. And history is sort of like a hobby for me. It's not I don't have a degree in history, but, and one of the reasons for that actually is because I hated history in high school. The way that they teach history is boring. They make you regurgitate names and dates and places and people, and they don't really give you like the tea, right? That makes history fun. But Richard Bushman, he definitely does that. And like I said, it's not just a biography or a list of events that happened in Joseph Smith's life. It's a cultural biography of the events of Joseph Smith's life. So he takes the events of Joseph Smith's life and he contextualizes them within the cultural context, which is 19th century America, that surrounded Joseph Smith and the events of the Restoration. Now, I do have to push back a bit on history. Right now in Mormon discourse, history is sort of like the name of the game. If you want to be in the Mormon history space or in the Mormon discourse space or in the apologetic discourse, you kind of have to know your history. But I think people they're sort of turned off by that because they're more interested in theology, right? What's Mormon theology? What do Mormons believe? What does the Restoration offer us that is not on offer among other denominations in Christianity, etc.? And those are important questions, and I think those should be the most important questions. But the reason why I'm talking about history today is because I think history can actually inform the theology that we hold dear. And not only that, but I think it's important to understand that theology is embedded within culture. And not only that, but theology in turn informs culture. And so there's sort of like this reciprocal dynamic between theology and culture and history. And all these things are sort of like informing one another. And so although history is not, like I said, my not my cup of tea, but my strong suit, I still think it's important and valuable. And in this particular case, I think it's incredibly valuable for us today, both theologically and culturally. So I wanted to get into that. Let me give you some other examples about how culture is important to understanding Scripture. What comes to mind for me is the Old Testament. The Old Testament, one of the biggest cultural issues in the Old Testament is hospitality. And so when you read the stories of Abraham and the stories of the New Testament, hospitality actually plays a huge role in kind of shedding light on the types of people that Abraham was and the events that unfold in the Old Testament. So, for example, when Jesus talks about Sodom and Gomorrah, the thing that he actually points to is their lack of hospitality. And that's just how much of a big deal hospitality is. That when Jesus refers to that story in the Old Testament, his primary concern is about the hospitality and how that city treated the foreigners that enter, which are, Abraham and his family. So, in the New Testament, philosophers have been quick to point out that Jesus is radical in how he inverts our moral understanding. There's a moral culture in the time of Jesus that's based on power, that's based on authority. Um, and, in the context of Roman culture and other ancient cultures and how they understood morality, when Jesus gives his Sermon on the Mount and gives the Beatitudes, he like literally inverts the moral order. Um, Nietzsche, um, Nietzsche in particular talks about how um, people who are considered noble, modern people today, when they hear the word noble, they think about someone who's like morally upright and praiseworthy. But back then, the noble were like the rich people, the aristocracy. And so Jesus, instead of praising the noble, he says, "Blessed are the poor and the humble." Um, and that really shifts the way that we think about morality. Um, and so again, there's Jesus is responding to his culture at the time, but now today, Jesus' words inform culture today and how we ought to treat the poor and the humble. So it's very important. The cultural angle and the cultural dimension of scripture and history are incredibly important. That leads us to Roughstone Rolling. I do want to kind of explain a bit more about Richard Bushman, if you're just for those who aren't aware. Richard Bushman is a faithful Latter-day Saint. I think he was trained at Harvard to do history. If not Harvard, I think it was one of the other Ivy Leagues. Um, but He's a master historian and he's also faithful, and he's upfront about his priors in Roughstone Rolling. He says, I'm writing this from the perspective of a faithful Latter-day Saint. I'm not ashamed of my commitment to the church, and of course that informs my biography. But he says, I'm so confident in my ability as a historian to present the life of Joseph Smith that, he doesn't believe that his faith and activity in the church will diminish his biographical work, but instead it enriches his biographical work. And the consensus regarding Roughstone Rolling is people tend to agree. Yeah, um, Roughstone Rolling is the greatest biography, and despite some people talk about objectivity. There's actually a debate. Can you truly write a history about Mormonism from an objective standpoint, or does it require like the the participation in the faith to really understand the history of Mormonism? We can, that debate is not going to be settled today, but I do believe Bushman gives us a run for his money in Roughstone Rolling, and his faithfulness, I think, does enrich the biography itself. So with that in mind, let's go. Let's dive into the text. I wanted to read an excerpt about the Book of Mormon and kind of what the Book of Mormon has to say about American culture, um, according to Richard Bushman. So let's take a look here. All this, meaning the Book of Mormon, turned American history upside down. The story of Israel overshadowed the history of American liberty. Literal Israel stood at the center of history, not the United States. The book sacralizes the land but condemned the people. The Indians were the chosen ones, not the European interlopers. The Book of Mormon was the seminal text, not the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. The gathering of lost Israel, not the establishment of liberty, was the great work. In the Book of Mormon, the biblical overwhelms the national. Taken as a whole, the Book of Mormon can be read as a document of profound social protest against the dominant culture of Joseph Smith's time. That may not have been most readers' first impression. Many converts said it confirmed their old beliefs. The book read like the Bible to them. Its gospel was standard Christianity. The book patriotically honored America by giving it a biblical history. And yet, on closer reading, the Book of Mormon contests the amalgam of Enlightenment, Republican, Protestant, capitalist, and nationalist values that constituted American culture. The combination is not working, the book says. America is too Gentile, too worldly, too hard-hearted. The Gentiles put down the power and miracles of God and preach up unto themselves their own wisdom and their own learning, that they may get gain and grind upon the faces of the poor. The nation must remember God and restore Israel or be blasted. The Book of Mormon proposes a new purpose for America, becoming a realm of righteousness rather than an empire of liberty. Against increasing wealth and inequality, the Book of Mormon advocates the cause of the poor. Against the subjugation of the Indians, it promises the continent to the native people. Against Republican government, it proposes righteous rule by judges and kings under God's law. Against a closed canon Bible and non-miraculous religion, the Book of Mormon stands for ongoing revelation, miracles, and revelation to all nations. Against skepticism, it promotes belief. Against nationalism, a universal Israel. It foresees disaster for the nation if the love of riches, resistance to revelation, and Gentile civilization prevail over righteousness, revelation, and Israel. Herman Melville said of Nathaniel Hawthorne, he says no in thunder. A no can be heard in the Book of Mormon's condemnation of an America without righteousness. I want to leave this quote with you guys. You guys can chew on that for a long while. If you haven't yet, please pick up a copy of Roughstone Rolling. Again, a fantastic biography. Richard Bushman is a master of history. And I hope you enjoy this. If you have enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please share it with people you care about. And if you have anything more to say, leave it in the comment or make a video in response, and maybe I'll respond to you. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.